Good morning, students. Today I shall continue with the same question that I have discussed in my previous presentation. That was question number 4 of page 137 in your book. So here is this table identified by the name player. Now before I shall work with this table, I have to set the database which contains this table called player as our current database. So for that, let me visit MySQL Workbench. So this is the startup screen of MySQL Workbench. Let me maximize it and then click on here, that is local instance of MySQL 56. On clicking that, I shall see a dialog window like this with user as root. Now I shall set the password for the user called root. The password will be SQL123. Now let me click this OK button. So this gives me access to the second window, which shows a rectangular like white colored area, and this rectangular shaped white colored area is known as the workspace, where we are going to type and execute the SQL commands. Now if we have to set the database which contains this table called player as our current database, then I have to make use of this use command. So I shall write use here and specify the name of that database which contains the table called player. Now that the name of the database is second database, so I shall write second database here, okay, because it is this particular database identified by the name second database which contains our table called player. Now using this command use second database, I will set this database as our current database so that I can work with the table called player. Now let me execute this command. So the tick mark in the output window indicates that this particular database has been set as our current database. Now I can easily work with this table called player. So this table player contains these entries for the columns PID, FNAME, LNAME till age. Now based on this table, there are two questions that I have to solve. The first question says write a query to count the number of players game wise. Now if we have to count the number of players, I have to use the count star function, okay, and if we are required to count the number of players game wise, again I have to use the group by clause, because I have to group this table on the basis of the game being played by the students. Now for the game called cricket, how many players are there? 2 players, okay. The first one is the student Astik and the second one is the student Mohan. So count star, okay, for the game called cricket shall be 2. Again, if we look here for the game called basketball, there are 2 players. First one is Hansika and the second one is Subham, okay. So count star will return 2 for the game called basketball. This is because there are only 2 players, Hansika and Subham, who plays the game basketball. Similarly, let's check for the game called hockey. There is only one player who plays the game called hockey, and he is Mahua. So count star shall return 1 for the game called hockey. So our query shall be select game comma count of that particular game from the table player, and then we shall group by the column called game, okay. So if the game is cricket, count of that particular game which is cricket shall return 2, because there are 2 players playing the game cricket, who are Astik and Mohan. Again, let's say if the game is Kho, okay, then count of game shall return 1. This is because there is only one player who plays the game Kho, and she is Anumita. In that way, we can find the number of players for the game called basketball. For the game called basketball, there are 2 players, Hansika and Subham. So if the game is basketball, count of game shall return 2. Now let me copy this SQL statement and paste it in the MySQL Workbench workspace. So for this query, that is select game, count of game from the table player group by game, okay, I shall see two columns, that is game and count of game, which shall list the games, okay, followed by the total number of players who plays that particular game, and that is shown by this column, that is count of game. So let me execute this query. So this is the output. It shows two columns, that is game and count of game. Now since we are grouping by the column called game, so for the game called basketball, okay, count of game will return 2, as I have already told that there are only 2 players playing the game called basketball. So 2 is getting displayed here against the game basketball. Now if the game is cricket, count of game shall again return 2, because this also I have already explained, there are 2 players who plays the game called cricket. That's why 2 gets displayed here for the game called cricket. Likewise, let's see for the game called Kho-Kho. There is only 1 player who plays the game called Kho-Kho, and I have already shown it to you. She was Anumita, who plays the game Kho-Kho. That's why against the game Kho-Kho, count of game returns 1. So just see this query and the output for a while. Okay, now let's come to the next question. It says write a query to list the records of players who play cricket or basketball. Now see, we are asked to list the records of players. Now we are going to list the records of players for which of these columns? Okay, is it PID, FName, LName, or age? Okay, now the column names are not specified here. Now since the column names are not specified, we have to assume that we are going to retrieve the records for all these columns starting from PID, FName, LName, game, gender, DOB till age. So for that I have to use the star operator, because star will retrieve the entries of all the columns. So the query shall be select star from player. Now see the condition. The condition should be that the player should play either cricket or basketball. Okay, the player has to play either of these 2 games, that is cricket or basketball. So I shall set the condition after the where clause as that the game should be either cricket or game should be basketball. So the query will be select star from player where game equal to cricket or game equal to basketball. Now let me copy this query and paste it over here in the MySQL Workbench. Now let me execute this query. Okay, before that let me place the appropriate quotation mark for the values of the column called game, which is cricket and basketball. Okay, so this is the query. Select star from player where game equal to cricket or game equal to basketball. Now let me execute this query. So this lists the entries for all the columns, that is PID, FName, LName till age, because I have used the star operator. Now they are going to display the entries for which the game is either cricket or basketball. As a result, out of all these entries, okay, only those entries have been selected for which the game is either cricket or basketball. So in total there are 4 entries, that is the first entry, this is for cricket, the second entry, this is for basketball, then this entry for cricket, and again this entry for basketball. So in total we have only 4 entries for which the player plays the game cricket or basketball. Okay, now this is the query, and let me execute this query. So you can see here in the output table only 4 records are getting displayed, and each of these records, okay, have students who play the game either cricket or basketball. And this is what is asked in the query, that we are required to retrieve the details of those players for which the game is either cricket or basketball. And that's why the query is select star from player where game equal to cricket or game equal to basketball followed by semicolon. So just have a look at the query and the output for a while. So I hope this is clear. Now I shall end this presentation here.